The Bucky was built in the Gulf of Mexico. It was launched in 1976. The old name on it was Mr. Bucky, and it was New York, New York. So it was built for a New York customer down in the Gulf. So I think in most of its life service was probably a small harbor tug or an assist tug in New York Harbor. I found the listing for this tugboat through a broker down in Louisiana, and they said the boat was in New York. It was a boat that used to dock right in New Bedford. The broker had stole the listing and was putting it on his website. Turned out it wasn't listed with a broker at all. It was owned by the U.S. Marshal, and it was in a pretty nasty Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The boat was called the Mr. Bucky, and the previous owner had told me that there's some story about the man who had this boat built named it after his son, who had some kind of terminal illness, and Mr. Bucky was a nickname for his kid. We purchased this boat out of New Bedford. We also purchased some kind of bad history with the boat, which made it difficult for us to get into business and set up accounts with people that had fear of anything to do with this boat because of all the people that the previous owner had screwed over. So they're like, no, we don't do business with that, I'm sorry. And so it took some time, and we changed the name and changed the colors. We're going to paint a different color, we're going to rename it. We couldn't come up with a name, and the whole idea of changing the name of the boat, you know, the bad juju that goes along with that. If you change the name of the boat, you know, you're asking for trouble, you know. The boat's not going to be happy with that. We sort of adjusted the name. We lost the Mr. and just called it the Bucky. It's 65 feet overall. The gross registered tons is about 56. She's just shy of 1,000 horsepower. The barge alone weighs about 450 tons without any material on it. And we added about 100 tons by putting this concrete deck on it. But we can hold up to 1,200 tons cargo on this barge. So the barge will go from drawing about 2.5, 3 feet of water to drawing about 10, 11 feet of water. We generally have 2 licensed guys on the boat, and you really don't need anything beyond that because this boat's so easy to handle, and with the electric winch. If we didn't have the winch, you'd probably need 2 guys. That's one of the nice features of the boat, that we actually have a towing winch. A lot of boats this size, they're dealing with 3-inch hawsers that have to be pulled in by hand or used as a capstan. And when that's iced up in January or February and you're trying to work on deck, that's not any fun. Or we get to stand back there and look down on the deck and turn a switch and go back in the wheelhouse and watch the winch on the video camera. Like they say in the tug business, it's hours of boredom coupled with moments of sheer terror. The captain that was working for us at the time, he was at the controls on the back deck, and I went up to release the headline so we could get out of here, and the headline was stuck behind one of the cleats. It was all jammed up, and he was already pulling away from the dock, and I was madly trying to let the line go. I couldn't get it released, so I was just going to toss the whole line ashore. I was just moving up to the end of the barge, didn't realize that the wind had shifted the barge and we were coming back at the dock. And I got pinned between the outside of the coamings and one of those black fendering pads. I had a bunch of clothing on, and I felt something on my back, and I looked up and I realized that we were against the dock already. And I just got crushed against the fendering pad by the barge. I got smashed and passed out and fell into the water. I had like a down vest on under my coat and probably just enough trapped air that it kept me up for a little while. But then Tim stabilized the barge and ran up there, and I looked up, and he's dropping a big dock line down to me. And I figure I'm just smashed, crushed, I can't do anything. Well, you're tossing me a line. What am I going to do with that? Now, he was pretty sharp in that moment. He had a plan, and this was a big, one of these big 1.5-inch dock lines. It's a floating line, and it had a big eye splice in the end. And he dropped a loop right around me, and he said, "Can you lift your arms?" And so I was able to lift my arms, and so it made a sling under my armpits, and they hauled me up. Like 28 rib fractures, and my pelvis was all broken in the front. That was January. I think I was back on my feet walking in May. I did have a moment there where I just had the real sharp realization that I was a dead guy. And when that barge was crushing me, I've seen it. I've seen what this barge will do when it's moving, you know, this slow and it's loaded. It'll just break, you know, crush things. And, you know, flesh and bones does not stop anything. As I felt that pressure on me, I realized, okay, this is how it happens. I have a family and 4 young children, and I'm not going to get to see my kids grow up, and it just makes me appreciate, you know, that having another chance and a sort of a different perspective on what my life is, and appreciation for what I do have. Our New Bedford end of the operation, where we load, it's 50 miles away. People think, oh, you're running over from Cape Cod, but there's really nowhere to load on Cape Cod. It's pretty important that we time our departure from New Bedford with the proper tide, primarily because we go through Woods Hole, which is a pretty sketchy little passage we have to get through, and the current runs very strongly through there, 4 or 5 knots. And we physically could not get through against that tide with a loaded barge. We come into Nantucket with aggregate. That's probably the bulk of what we do. And we pull in here and the machines are set up, ready to go. We lay alongside the dock and the big excavator starts loading the trucks. And when we have a big enough hole to work in, they drop a small skid loader into that hole and starts delivering material from the side of the barge that the excavator can't reach. And we just keep advancing the barge along in front of the excavator until we're emptied out and cleaned up. One of the other little side jobs that we picked up over the years is providing a platform for fireworks shows out on the water. And we've done the Nantucket show, I think, for 5 years now. It's kind of fun to get involved and see how that whole process works, and to see it really up close. I think we got a lot of good years left in the Bucky. We've brought her back from a pretty rough condition and did a lot of steel work on the hull. The engines are fresh. We've gussied up the interior, and this boat seems to be getting better and better under our watch. And as long as we can keep up with the federal regulations, I see this boat staying in the business for quite a while.